What's up guys, it's Matt Collins-Jones here, also known as the D365 Geek, and today we're going to talk about adaptive cards for Microsoft Teams. So what are adaptive cards? I'm going to go through what adaptive cards are. I'm going to show you how to build an adaptive card. I'm going to show you how to use an adaptive card, and I'm going to talk generally about adaptive cards and not a specific part of Power Automate today. That being said, we are actually going to build them inside of Power Automate, and that's what I want to show you. So firstly, what are adaptive cards? Adaptive cards are a really cool feature in Microsoft Teams. I think they're also available in other places like Outlook and other places. Can't think of any off the top of my head, but they're available in Microsoft Teams, which is what I'm going to show you mainly today. But they are available elsewhere. They are a little sort of like card that will pop up to a user and ask them questions and gather feedback and gather inputs, and then you can do actions off the back of them. So it's kind of like it introduces a card to a user, and then it's displayed in a certain way. You can kind of format things, add certain things in, take inputs, and then do actions off the back of those things. So it's a really handy and useful tool that you can use. I've never previously used adaptive cards, so when I came across this and I started looking into it and researching it, I found that these are a really useful thing. People have been talking about it for the last couple of years, but for me, this is kind of my first foray into it. Now, before I kind of show you it in Power Automate and how we're going to build one of the resources I do want to point out is the Adaptive Card Designer. I'm going to drop the link down below in the description, but this is the Adaptive Card Designer, and it allows you to create an adaptive card and get the code out for that adaptive card. So it firstly asks you for your host app. So this is where I was trying to remember all different places you can use adaptive cards. So one is in bots. That's the thing I should have known. So in bots, you can use them in Outlook, you can use them in Teams, Windows Timeline, Cortana Skills, and you can use these in multiple places. And this is a really useful website. It's got everything you need. You can get all the stuff you want in here. You can build the whole thing in here. And that's fine. That's great. You can do exactly what you want. It's got links to documentation, Steamer samples. It's got a blog. It's got loads and loads of things. You can also set the target version of what you're going to use. So you can absolutely build things inside of here, and I highly recommend that you check this website out. It's really useful. But because I'm a Power Automate guy, and I found recently that you can actually build these inside Power Automate, that's what I want to show you today. So I'm going to drop the link down below. This is a fantastic tool if you're using anything else like the bot framework, Outlook messages, and want to use adaptive cards there. I'm going to show you how to use adaptive cards in Power Automate. It is a little bit flaky, so you may want to use this still, but at least I want to show you it. So let's flip back over to Power Automate. I have a flow here with a manual trigger, and I'm going to click on New Step. I'm going to go to Microsoft Teams, and I can choose multiple actions here, but I'm going to choose this first one that says post an adaptive card to a Teams user and wait for a response preview. So one thing about this designer and about how you use this is there is a slight bug at the moment in Power Automate in terms of this. So I get my adaptive card here, and I get the recipient, the message. I'm not going to go through all these. So the recipient is who you want to send this to. So in this instance, this action is asking to send it to a user. The message is the actual card data itself. So if you wanted to, if you were that way inclined, you could write all the JSON because it's all based on JSON and paste it in here. You can also get it from that adaptive card designer, and you can put it in here, and that'll be the message that it kind of posts to. There's also details about update messages and should the card update. This means that once you do an action in the card, do you want the card to update and show a different message? And this is kind of like whether that gets updated or not. You also have a summary, as in like what you're sending to people, and the is alert is about do you want to make an alert to someone in Teams. So the ones we're going to concentrate on today are recipient and message. So there is a slight bug, as I kind of mentioned. So the bug is that we need an email address in here first. So when I type matt.collins at techservicesgroup.com, Microsoft.com, and then we're going to add a message into here, which is just a couple of curly braces. There's a reason for this. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit save. And at the moment, you can see I don't have anywhere that I can make an adaptive card. There's no button for me to do it. If I go up to the cog and go to the View All Power Automate settings and switch on the experimental features and click Save, it's going to say you don't need to reload the site. It's fine, we'll reload. And what we'll have is we'll have the recipient value in here, and we now have this create adaptive card. If I just added the same Teams action in, on the recipient, I can only search recipients, and it says I can't find any. So, and I don't have the option to put in a custom value at the moment. So that's why I need to put in that and then switch it. So you need to put it in, save, and then switch. So we have this, and now we have this new create adaptive card button. So if I click on create adaptive card, I get this. So this is what it's going to look like to the user, and this is a base adaptive card that they give you by default. And you can see that we've got some boxes in here with text, we've got some labels, we've got some text inputs that we can put in, and we have a submit button. What I'm going to do is now create a new adaptive card. So I click on new card, click on blank, and then you can see we're going to start with a blank canvas. And I'll go through all of this screen and what we can do with it. So we've got a new card, we've got a save card, that's what I do. Select the host app. So this is going to be Microsoft Teams, but as we saw in that adaptive card designer, there are other places where you can use this. And by all means, you can actually just copy the JSON out of here and use it somewhere else. It's just going to be dependent on if that's compatible with the JSON that you're creating. We do have an undo and a redo button, and we have copy card JSON. We also have an elements properties pane over here, so when we start to put elements onto the card, we'll see different properties in here, a little bit like Canvas apps. At the bottom, we have card payload. So this is the JSON, and as you're building things, it's going to automatically build this JSON block out for you, which is going to be used the adaptive card. So you can already see that the type is an adaptive card, and the schema is adaptivecards.io/schema, JSON. So it's going to send that to it's going to be the first thing that the application sees. So Teams or Outlook, for instance, and then it's going to go, okay, this is an adaptive card. I know what this schema looks like. I'll build it based on that. That's great. There is also card structures out here on the right, and it's just kind of showing you about the card itself. So we'll just minimize that back in for now. So what we'll do is we'll start with the stuff on the left. So on the left, we've got, at the top, we've got containers. So we've got container, image set, fact sheet, column set. So this allows you to create different things inside of your card. So this is, so a container is kind of like a, we'll drop a container onto here. A container is kind of like a space for you to put stuff. An image set is like when you would have multiple images. Fact set is just when you have multiple things that you want to just say, and column set is if you want to make columns. So once we drop the container on there, we then want to maybe drop some text on there. So we've got text blocks, rich text blocks, images, media, and action sets. So I think the first four are self-explanatory. If you want to include text on there, if you want to include rich text so you can format it a little bit, if you want to include an image or some media like a video or something, you can drop all those onto there. Actions is a little bit different. An action is a certain thing that a card's going to do, and therefore you're going to do an action based off of that, and there's some actions that we can use. So in this instance, what I'll do is I'll drop on a text block at the top, and what we will say and what we do in the text block is we can create the text for that text block. So we can put something in like first name, for instance, and we can have that there. Now, I do need to give all of these an ID. I don't think the ID is required for the like texts. They are required for the inputs, but I'm going to put them in here anyway. So I've given that an ID. You can see I've got different options. I've got only show when, so I can have like rules on here. I've got spacing on here, so I could, increase the spacing or decrease the spacing, and it'll update when I look at stuff. Height, maximum lines, font style. I can change the font weight, text, color, for instance. I can do loads of different things to try and format this, but we're just going to leave it by default for now. Then we've got our inputs. So we've got our text inputs. We have a date input, which will give us a date picker. We have a time input, which gives us a time picker. And a number input, which again gives us a number picker. Input choice. So we could set like a option set list, and we say you get to choose one of these options. And we also have a toggle input, as in like yes or no, binary sort of thing. So what we'll do is we'll drop a text input on here for now. It goes in there, and we can see we get this little validation error pop at the bottom. All inputs must have a unique ID, so we'll say this is first input, and instantly that goes away. And then we got this sort of placeholder text down here, and we could just put in sort of like type your name here, for instance. And then we could say first name, and then we may want to drop in another text block and say day of birth, like that. And we could drop in a date picker. Drop that into here. We can see it's formatted in date, month, year. And we have the little calendar picker there. So we could say, okay, what we want is, we're going to call this date input. And again, we have different values in here depending on what we're doing. So different properties depending on what we're doing. So because we're in a date input picker, we can set a default value for the date. We can set a minimum value and a maximum value. So think about when you're going to like the cinema or something like that, you're asked if you're over 18, ask your date of birth, you have to scroll down, and it has to be a certain number, otherwise you're not allowed in. You could do something like that in here. So we're just going to have first name and we're going to have date of birth, and that's all that's going to be on our picker, on our first adaptive card. So once we've got an adaptive card, we actually need to do something with it. So it's all great to take this information, but you need a button to say, yeah, that's it. Like, I want to submit this back to my flow. I want to submit this back to wherever it's going, and get that data out. So for that, we need an action. So this is what I said before, that we're going to talk about actions. If I click on add an action, so I can set this action because it's in this container. Click on add an action, I get these 4 different options. So I get open URL, submit, show card, toggle visibility. So the show card and toggle visibility allow you to show different things based on other criteria. So we can say this true, this not true, etc. The submit is where we're sending this back to where this has come from. So in this instance, I'm going to use it in a flow. It's going to send an active card to a user, and then when they submit it, it's going to bring that data back into Power Automate. And we also have the open URL button as well, and we could specify like a custom URL. So if I click action submit, it's going to give me a button on here, and it's going to give me the ability to submit this. So I could give this a new title, submit form, so that. And then I can change the style. I can give it an icon URL if I want to set this to a specific icon, and give this an ID as well. I could also add a open URL action on here, and again, what we won't call it open URL, we'll call it open website. And then we need to put in a URL, so we'll put in https www.d365geek.co.uk. And what it'll do is when you click on that, it'll then open the website, whereas this one will submit the form itself. Once we're happy with the layout, and again, we could add multiple containers, we can add multiple columns onto this sort of thing. We can, add certain things into here. There's loads that we can do, but let's just remove these for now. Remove that, and we'll just keep it with a simple first name and date of birth. Once we're happy with it all, we can save the card. We do have the option to copy the card JSON if we want to use this elsewhere. So if we open this card payload at the bottom, we can see this is now updated. So it's not just got these first 4 lines. We now have a body which has containers. We have first name, we have date of birth, we have the actions at the bottom. So we have loads and loads of stuff that that's been populated in there from us building this card in sort of a WYSIWYG. So it all looks big and scary. It's not big and scary. It's actually pretty straightforward once you just click around and have a play with it. So we will save this card. And when we hit save, we can actually see this edit adaptive card has reset, and it no longer says create adaptive card, it says edit adaptive card. Now the update message and the should card update, these are messages that are going to be shown if we update something. So if we choose this to not update and say no, that means that when we hit that submit button, it's not going to do anything. It's not going to change the screen at all. It's just going to stay there, and that's fine in some instances, but in other instances you want to stop the user from doing things. So what we will do is we will say yes, we're going to stop the people from updating. We'll update the card, and then the update message is saying thank you for replying. And again, if I click on that show advanced options stuff, I've got the summary and the is alert, which I'll go through in a different video, but it's essentially just going to be what we're sending to a user. So once we're good, once we're done, we can test this out. So we'll click on test. I'll perform a trigger action. We'll save and test. We'll, that shouldn't be there, but oh well, whatever. We'll run the flow. Click done, something from earlier. I thought I removed it. So this is the wait and response one. So we've triggered the flow. We'll go over to our Microsoft Teams. We can now see the teams in here, and we can say, right, okay, what's your first name? Matt. This is my adaptive card that's been posted as a flow bot in here. This is what it looks like. If I click in here, it's going to ask me for a date picker, so I can click on April. If I go back in time, let's just, whatever, April 13th. I wasn't born in 91, but let's do it anyway. And then I can hit submit and click submit, and then it's going to update that adaptive card, and that's how an adaptive card works. You can send it to a user, you can get an input and a response back and send that back to us. And the flows now run, and I can do the same thing again. Let's just trigger this based off the last trigger. That'll start running, and instead of clicking that submit button, I can just click open website, and the website's going to open my website like this. So it's really useful. And if you come back to it, you can notice that this doesn't update, so it's not updated because I've not hit a submit button. But if I hit the submit button, it updates. We get a new message. So this is an adaptive card. This is how adaptive cards work. Now, there is a lot more complexity to this. You can format these in different ways. You can bring values in from other places. So, we could change certain things like this. And, we could say, right, okay, we want to bind this to an input from the flow, or we want to bind something else to the input from the flow. So you could take something like, someone's first name that you're going to send this to, and you could say, hello, Nancy, please fill out this card, or please gather this information, and you could do that. So there's loads and loads and loads of things that you can do with this. It looks a little scary once you first open it and once you start playing around with it, but it's really straightforward. So this is a small introduction into adaptive cards. I'm not an adaptive card expert, but I've had a load of fun, and I've been able to quickly and easily build a bunch of these things to play around with and to gather certain pieces of information. So I think it's great. I think adaptive cards are great. I'd highly recommend you checking out the designer, adaptivecards.io. I think that's what it's called. adaptivecards.io/designer. We can do all the same things as you can kind of see in here. We can do the exact same things. It's just a slightly different interface. You can do it in here, and again, we can just take that JSON, and if we wanted to, we can take that JSON back to our flow and put it in there if we want to trigger it from there. So yeah, there we go. That is a quick introduction to adaptive cards. I hope you found this video useful. I am going to be covering some videos on adaptive cards with Power Automate and Microsoft Teams in the future, which is why I want to do this video, is to show you how adaptive cards work and the fact that they're not big and scary. So I hope you found this useful. I've really enjoyed this. If you want to let me know what you guys use adaptive cards for, post it in the comments down below. I'll be sure to check them out. If you enjoyed this video, if you could like and share it with your friends, that would be appreciated. If you've not already, click the subscribe button and stay up to date with all my latest videos. I'll see you next time.